Welcome, everyone, to the L7C podcast. Today, we have a very special episode for you guys. Today, we're bringing back the UFC episode. We only had one in the middle of 2020. We're going to make it our job to have more UFC content on the channel. You guys are really digging it. And with that, you got to bring our UFC expert, Chuck Marlowe. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing today, Martin?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. And since it's your first podcast of 2021, just want to wish you and your family a happy new year. Hope you guys had a good holiday season. And before, last time you came on, you didn't have a kid, and now you have a child and you're engaged. So just want to
Yes, sir.
Congratulations from the L7C to you and yours.
Thank you. Thank you. You got married in that timeline as well, too. So congratulations to you, too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But yeah, man, we're here to talk some UFC. It's been a minute.
It has.
Khabib's fight, and he didn't end up retiring. And you had the upset in that one last time.
I did, and he shut me up, and that's why you don't bet against Khabib.
Amen to that. But today we're going to be hitting on some matches that are happening. If people don't know, there's a UFC bout this weekend on ABC. Is that right, Chuck?
Yes, ABC or on ESPN Plus.
Hey. So, and that's headlined by Holloway?
Correct, it is. It's going to be Holloway and Kattar.
Okay. And then next week, we're going to be hitting that one as well with Conor McGregor making his return for his second bout against Dustin Johnson. Is that right?
Yeah, Dustin Poirier. Yep, second bout.
So let's go right into this one next this weekend. So Chuck, why should people tune into this Max Holloway fight and this pay-per-view?
Well, number one, this is a match for Max Holloway to kind of get back in his groove. He's working his way back in slowly but surely. But for the past few fights, I think on his past 5 fights, he's 2-3. So he's making some good way with coming back and getting some wins. But in order to regain his title level status where he was before, he has to make a lot of noise. But he's going against Calvin Kattar, who's obviously someone else in the UFC in that featherweight division that's on the way up. And he's been having a lot of explosive fights, so they decided to try and put him against Holloway, see if Holloway still got it or if he's just kind of still trying to find his groove.
Yeah, because I'm looking on UFC's site right now, and they have Max still ranked number 1 and Calvin ranked number 6.
Correct.
I do remember Max's last fight, a lot of people felt like he got screwed out of that belt. What did you think?
So that last fight he had, I thought it was a really close one, and it was you can't, that's why you can never leave it up to the judges in this sport, because it's always going to come down to just at the end of the day who the judges think did better, and not everybody always has good judgment. So you can go based off of the fights. I think he beat Volkanovski. He had, I feel like, a better kick intake. He was trying to keep it up with the kicks, because last fight before then, when he lost to Volkanovski, he was getting kicked up, and then that's really what pulled away the fight. And he had more kicks in the next fight, and I just think he was trying to put up as many punches as Volkanovski was putting out, and I feel like he did good enough to put up more than him.
Okay. Now, will we ever get? So if Max wins this fight against Calvin, is he going right back for the belt, or what's Dana going to do at book wise?
So for that, I honestly feel like Dana is probably going to put him up for another fight for the belt. Am I sure that he's going to hold up to it? Maybe. I think a part 3 for that fight would be epic, but if he loses that fight, then it's pretty much over with for him against Volkanovski.
Okay. Who are you liking in this main event of Calvin versus Max this Saturday?
Honestly, I'm thinking Max is going to take it away. They're like, oh, does Max lose it? Max this, that, Max that. You got to think, Holloway is still very young. I think he's like, 25, 26? And he's still very young. He came into this sport very young, and he dominated when he was very young. So he still is young. He still has a lot to give to the UFC. And I think I'm going to go with Holloway in this one. It'll come down to decision or a late fifth round knockout, TKO, I should say, because Kattar definitely puts out a lot of punches and has a lot of punching power. So I think it'll come down to, I think their KO percentages are like 50% each. So, and then in like 40% for their decision output for each of the fighters. So I honestly think it'll be a high action fight. Both of the fighters are going to put out a lot of punches, deal a lot of damage. Holloway is always going to end up with some damage, but I think he'll come out with the win by decision.
And I'm seeing this is at 3 p.m. still on Fight Island. Has UFC any fights in the United States yet, or are they still all Fight Island?
So they've had some in Vegas at the complex that they have down there, usually where they do all the Contender Series and the UFC other show that they had. Just drawing a blank on it right now, but they're bringing it back again, actually, to see what fighters they can bring out and produce. So we'll see how that goes for them.
Now, besides this main event on this card for this Saturday, are there any other matches that are sticking out? Are there fighters that the people who don't follow it too much need to be on the lookout for on this card?
Well, we got Ohio's very own Matt Brown. He's the co-main event going against Carlos Condit. Yeah, Matt Brown, he has a gym out here in Columbus. Well, not really Columbus, more like Dublin-ish area called Immortal Fitness. He actually followed me on Instagram, so shout out to him. I think he's getting very up there in age, but he's a pretty good fighter, and that's going to be one. And then one I would also look at is the Li Jingliang. He's a very huge underdog in this fight, but I project him to win. He's a up and coming fighter. And then Jaquan Buckley, if you haven't seen his knockout of the year last year, then you're just a madman. But he has a fight on that card, so that's a big knockout probably going to happen there. But other than that, I would say those are the two good fights that are supposed to be on there.
With Matt Brown, what was his last fight?
Matt Brown's last fight probably almost a year ago, if I'm not mistaken, because he lost his last fight. I'm pretty sure he was up. He was looking pretty good, but I think his last fight was like May 16 of 2020. So I mean, it's not that far out, but it was I'm pretty sure it was a loss to Beza. And yeah, but then the two fights before that were wins against Diego Sanchez and Saunders. So he's putting out wins still, but just not as much.
Okay. So we got Ohio's very own on there. We got the knockout of the year on there. We got obviously Max on there. So that card's actually pretty good, and I feel like it's going under the radar a little bit.
It has, because when you have a fight like Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier headlining the beginning of the year, technically, it's going to draw more eyes. They're going to see that fight, and they're like, wow, that's the fight we want to see. But definitely wouldn't sleep on this card. I think it'll be a great card. It's on ABC, which hasn't happened in a long time. So it's something for the people to see.
Yeah, because with it being on ABC, if you don't have ESPN Plus, you could still watch it like live, right?
Correct.
Wow,
that's like a first. Really, it's a big deal for the UFC, honestly.
Yeah, so that's awesome.
Get some national eyes on there.
Right. But let's go to that one Saturday, January 23rd, the one that everyone's really looking forward to. Conor versus Dustin. When was Conor's last fight? Was it Khabib, or
his last fight was against Cerrone when he knocked him out with the shoulders. Mm-hmm. It's been what I think. I'm trying to think what day that was. Like January. That was a year. It's basically a year from now. It was January 18th. So he hasn't fought in a year. So it looks like he's just taking 2-year-long breaks now between fighting. But we'll see what happens with this fight and how it'll boost him forward or bring him back.
Yeah, because Dana White was on, ESPN doing the rounds, and they were asking what his dream situation would be with this fight. And then he said something for Conor to fight 2 more times this year. And if he wins this fight, then he fights for a title, wins the title, and defends the title all in this year. Is that feasible at Conor's age and his interest, because ever since that Floyd Mayweather boxing match, he really hasn't been in the UFC octagon that much.
Well, because the reason he hasn't really, I think, been in there as much is because, like you said, that Floyd Mayweather fight that he had, that got him what he wanted. That's what everyone's dream is probably when they get into this sport. Other than getting a belt, their second dream is to support their family and make money. And that fight boosted him to another status, put him on the Forbes list, and it got him a lot of money and a lot of attention. So he's doing a lot of commercials, a lot of different things. He has his own brand of alcohol, Proper 12. So he's making money. So you think about the level of income that a lot of UFC fighters make, even for someone of his status, it's still not on a Floyd Mayweather level. So he's kind of like erring to the side of caution, because you're putting yourself at a big risk when you go out there in the octagon, because that's something that takes a toll on your body, like you said. But I think he's just trying to figure out exactly what he wants to do, because he wants to support his family and he wants to also have longevity of his life.
Before we break this fight down, I want to give credit to the other people on the main card. What match outside of the Conor match are you looking forward to?
Dan Hooker and Michael Chandler's UFC debut.
Okay.
That's going to be a huge fight. They got Michael Chandler over from Bellator, and you have Dan Hooker, who's amazing fighter, still up on the up and coming. I think his last fight, if I'm not mistaken, was a loss, but I think he was putting out pretty good fights before then. Yeah, I think he lost to Poirier. That was his last fight, Poirier. He lost, but his past few fights, he's been hit or miss. But I know he has a lot to offer to the UFC. And then Michael Chandler, who's just exploding onto the scene. They put him on a co-main event of a biggest fight of the year, probably to start the year. So they have high hopes for Michael Chandler. Dude's absolutely shredded. I think he'll make a good lightweight contender. We'll see how he does, though.
Who do you have in this match and why?
I say Dan Hooker, because he has a lot of reach and a lot of length, and he's going to keep him at bay, and he needs to make up and try and get back to a lightweight title shot. And they're just testing him by putting someone new in there, and he just has to stop the momentum of Michael Chandler, because Michael Chandler's going to come in with a lot of momentum, and we'll see how he handles the fight. If he handles it fighting calm and patiently, or just coming all out guns a-blazing, it'll be a huge learning curve for him coming into a big fight as his first fight. Dan Hooker definitely has to win, or they're going to try to move him down a little bit in the rankings for sure.
Okay. Well, that's a good one. Up his debut, Michael. I'm going to be into that. Any other of these matches? There's 2 women's matches on.
Correct.
Card, right?
The one that I'm really looking forward to is Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Nunes, because that's going to be a big fight for both of them. Number 8 versus number 9. They're both 2 really good fighters who I think put out a lot of good striking intake. And I'll see how they do, but I don't think anyone's going to ever hold up really good against Zhang Weili. I think there's a huge I feel like Ribas is a more well-rounded fighter, where she puts up a probably even percentage of KOs, submissions, and decisions, as to where Marina's, she's very strike-oriented, and she puts out a lot more punches and KOs. So that'll be a very interesting fight on paper. And don't ever sleep past Jessica Ai and Joanne, because that's the number 6 versus number 7 for women's flyweight. So those are going to be 2 really good fights. I can't wait to see if some more women put out some fight of the year level of competition.
And then speaking of the women, when is the woman fighting again? Amanda Nunes. When is she coming back?
That's going to be interesting to see. Maybe against Jake Paul or Logan Paul. That's what everyone wants to see right now, but that's probably not going to happen. But she's right now, I think she's more of taking care of her family. You know, she just had a kid, her and her wife. So they're trying to get that all situated and handled. And then I think after a while after that, they're going to, she'll put out a fight probably in the middle of the year, maybe a little bit sooner.
You brought up the fight. Did you watch the Jake Paul and Nate Robinson fight, or did you just catch
I watched it, and then I got uninterested because it just seemed like Nate Robinson didn't know what the hell he was doing in there. So I stopped watching it, and then I went on to I went back on later to watch Tyson versus Holyfield, and that's when I went back on. But I caught the clip of it, of the knockout, and I was just like, not surprised.
So you weren't were you not surprised that Jake won by that, or were you not surprised that Nate Robinson had no business stepping into a ring because he thought since he was a professional athlete, he just beat him? Like, what were you not surprised?
I wasn't surprised that he didn't know what he was doing in there. I'm not also surprised by the Paul brothers' output either, because you got to think they are both really good wrestlers in high school. They've had some background knowledge of combat sports, so they're not completely oblivious to it. I know they probably had some prior training before. Nate Robinson's coming into this just thinking, oh, I've played football. I'm a dual sport athlete. I can do this too. But he has no idea of the different animal and different beast that he walks into when he steps into a ring or an octagon. Either way, he just wasn't meant to be there. And you got to think about the size comparison. Yes, they're probably not that far off in height, but Paul is more shredded than Nate Robinson, even at his status of an athlete.
Now, with that main event that they did with Tyson and Holyfield and old people, retired people coming back and boxing, maybe doing those type of fights because it brings in views. Would UFC ever consider something like that, bringing like older time people, have like an old person versus old person bout to bring in views? Would they ever do something like that, or you think?
I don't see them doing that ever. Usually when they retire someone, they retire them for good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, think about the Chuck Liddells, Tito Ortiz. When they redid that fight was done by Oscar De La Hoya and his promoting company, because they didn't want to deal with the UFC. Most of the old fighters usually know how it is with money nowadays in the UFC, so they want to put that damage on their body. Other promotion cards will do it because they could care less. They think, oh, look, this is for the numbers and ratings. But there's a danger that also goes into it at certain ages and certain levels. And there's just a waste of people's time sometimes. So I don't really see them ever doing that. I see Oscar De La Hoya maybe trying to exploit that some more. But I don't see the UFC ever trying to do that.
Now, after his win, Paul was calling out Conor, and Conor has already done the fight with Floyd at $100 million, the biggest pay-per-view buy of all time. Would Conor entertain that fight with all of the monies?
Without a doubt. If he can get the ratings of a Floyd fight, which no one gets the ratings of a Floyd fight really ever, but you can get close to up there, I think that fight will definitely be something that he would do because of the larger output of money that he could get. He could probably make more off of the fight against Paul than he would against Dustin Poirier. So I think at the end of the day, he's looking for the putting out more money for his family and protecting himself.
Okay. Because Paul versus Mayweather, is that a real exhibition that's going to happen, or is that?
I'm not sure. I think it's just smoke. But then again, Mayweather's always looking for a way to make money, and I don't feel like he feels threatened by Logan Paul.
All right, let's go back to this card, that main event, Dustin versus Conor. So I just want to ask you three things. Who needs this win more? Who do you think has the advantage going into this fight? And what are the keys for either person to win?
So I have a hot take again. No one's going to like it, but I always have a hot take for most fights because I'm optimistic. And I see the bright sides of some fighters. I'd say I'm going to take Dustin Poirier first and foremost. Either 4th or 5th round TKO. If not, it's going to go to decision and he'll win. I think he has a better punch output, and I feel like he has a really good chin on him. But you got to think about it. Dustin Poirier, he's been putting out a lot of more fights over the years than Conor McGregor. Like we said, Conor McGregor's been on a status of a hiatus. When he came back, he fought Cerrone, who's a lot older and a lot more weathered in years for the UFC, and it's kind of almost at that point where he's about to retire. So I feel like that fight wasn't really too fair because McGregor still, yes, he took a long break, but he's still an athlete, and I still think he has some level of retainability. As to where I feel like Dustin Poirier, though, he's a lot more solid. He's been fighting constantly every year, and he's been putting out a lot of fights. The last few fights that he's had, he's fought a lot of top-notch contenders, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to go look at his last few fights real quick because he's put out a lot of good fights against a lot of good people. His last fight was against Dan Hooker. He lost that. Then he fought Khabib. He actually won against Hooker, sorry, and then he lost against Khabib, of course, because Khabib's just goated. But then I think he beat Holloway. He destroyed Holloway in that fight. I remember because he was just punching the man's face in. He lost against, he won against Alvarez. He won against Justin Gaethje. He beat Anthony Pettis. He's put out a lot of good fights over the past few fights. So he's really slept on in the fact that he's putting out good fights. But he went up before that belt after he won, and he lost to Khabib. So that's what gets him overshadowed as good of a fighter that he is. So that's one reason why I have him. And I feel like in the last fight between him and McGregor, he caught him in some more areas and stages, and he had a lot more better combinations. But I know he was a lot more hot-headed than he is now, and I feel like he's a little bit more mature and older, and he won't fall for the antics of Conor, and he's not going to be as hot-headed. He'll be a lot more calmer and more pace, and he'll keep that boxing style in there, and he's going to be able to just find his groove, potentially.
Okay. Now, you're saying you're taking Dustin, which I wish we had a little upset ring thing, because I'm sure a lot of people would take Conor. But let's say if Dustin does win, is it officially over for Conor if he loses this, or can he still continue on and still be a box office?
I think it's going to deteriorate his name a little bit, but I think it's always going to be Conor. You got to think he's like the first double champ. He's had such a high status. And I feel like that's one reason why he also doesn't feel like he needs to fight as much. He doesn't feel like he needs to prove anything to anybody other than the fact that the person who he really wants to fight the most at the end of the day is probably Khabib. And he wants to prove himself that he can beat Khabib. But I feel like it's not going to deteriorate his value as much as it could. I still think he'll be able to put out more fights. I think he might have a break in between again. But I think that he's always going to be the notorious Conor McGregor. He's always going to be that person that really brought more hype to the UFC. So he's always going to be able to be a box office hit.
Okay. What round did you have this match?
I said 4th or 5th. I'll probably go 4th. If it goes into the 5th, then it'll probably be by decision. But I say 4th round, late in the rounds, like 3 minutes and 37 seconds into. If I had to call a specific.
Now, are you saying knockout, rear neck?
I'm saying it's going to be a TKO. He's probably going to catch him with a nice few combos, get him wobbled, and then he's going to get on top and start working some ground and pound. Because I feel like he's going to just start putting on a higher punch output, and Conor's not going to be able to take all the blows.
Okay. Well, you heard it here first, man. I think Chuck is the first person on planet Earth to have Dustin upsetting Conor McGregor. So if Dustin does upset Conor, you know who you heard it from first was Mr. Chuck Marlowe. I want to talk about your guy for a little bit.
The Bones.
Go, Jon Jones. Well, first, when Khabib retired, a lot of people were starting to say that he was the GOAT, and Jon Jones took offense to that. Now, is there anyone who could actually challenge Jon Jones to being the GOAT of UFC?
No, maybe St. Pierre. But still, no, I don't think anyone can compete with Jon Jones. Jon Jones, I still consider him undefeated. There's a technicality to that one fight. Everyone still knows that he won that fight. It was a very heated call for that fight. But I think no one's going to... Jon Jones is ridiculously good. He's just good. There's nothing else to really put about it. Yes, his last few fights, I'd say he's probably been a little bit staggerish, but I still would say he hasn't been at a point where you're like, oh, he sucks. Like, there's no way you can honestly say that. You can say that he's not a GOAT.
Okay. He posted a picture just yesterday, I believe.
Correct.
Him bulking up to go heavyweight, and I don't know if it's looking that he's going to be potentially 250.
Yeah, he's around 250 right now, they say.
So what is he trying to accomplish in heavyweight? Is he trying to just win every belt? Like, what's he trying
Honestly, I feel like he's kind of trying to spite DC maybe a little bit, just to be a little bit petty. and just show off what he can do there at heavyweight. But I feel like he's just got bored of light heavyweight and he feel like there's no true competition. So he's trying to move up to see where there might be some more competition. You got hard hitters up in the heavyweight division. So you have a lot of people who are a lot more, they're dangerous if they hit you. I feel like he wasn't feeling threatened that much by who he's getting hit by in the light heavyweight. So he's trying to prove to himself and then prove to the others that he has what it takes at the heavyweight division too. And that he's a multi-weight athlete. So we'll see how he does there. He wants to go against Stipe or Ngannou probably. He wants to probably take on for the belt as soon as possible, and then probably clear out a few fights in that division.
What about the guy he has a feud with? Well,
Adesanya, as you see, is moving up to light heavyweight, as I called. Ding, 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 ding.
Yes, you did.
So that's not a surprise to me either, though. He's going to try and prove that he can take out. I don't know why he moved up so quick, but I see him trying to prove that he can take out the same level of competition that Jon Jones was going against, and he's trying to do it probably a little bit more effortlessly than he did. I don't think he's going to be able to do it as effortlessly as he thinks because light heavyweights are going to hit a lot harder than the middleweights, and he's going to learn that. And we're going to see how it goes for him. I love Adesanya, don't get me wrong, but we'll see how he does. I'm optimistic for that one to see how he can hold up in that light heavyweight division. But I think he's going against the champ already for the belt as soon as he gets, I think that's in about 3 months or so, maybe, if I'm not mistaken.
If I do remember, you called it that he was going to move up to light heavyweight. Did you also say something that after he, whatever goes through it, wins the belt, and after John's done, he would drop back down to light heavyweight to take him out? Or
no, that's exactly what I was saying. I said probably in about maybe end of the year or so, because I said at the beginning of this year, probably they would move up, clear out their divisions, maybe end of the year or start of next year. You'll have a title fight, maybe a headline for the end of the year before New Year's. So that way they can put out a mega box office hit, put up some numbers for a fight. That's what I can see happening.
So far, man, you're calling it to a T. So if we get to December or whatever at the end of the year and that fight's happening, again, everyone's going to know you were the first one to get us on that track. Chuck, is there anything else going on in UFC or combat sports that the world needs to know about before we sign off on our first UFC?
I'd say it'd be the second fight card of the year. It's going to be, I think, it's a fight night. It's Michael Chiesa versus Neil Magny. I think that's a fight that people are sleeping on because you have Holloway fighting to start the year, and then you have McGregor also coming in. So it's a card that's right in the middle of those two on, I think, Wednesday, January 20th. I think it's at like 12 or something. And that's one that people are sleeping on, but that's a number 8 versus number 9. And I think that's going to be very good for that division. Sorry. I think that's going to turn out really good for them. I think Neil Magny's an up-and-coming fighter in the UFC. So is Chiesa. He's a lot more slept on, I'd say, than Neil Magny. But I think that's going to be a really good fight. The only thing is Neil Magny's putting out double the fight punch output, I would say, for the hits landed per minute. So we'll see how that goes. On that card as well, I think there's Roxanne Modafferi versus Vivian Araujo. And I think that's going to be another good fight for the women's flyweight, which will be a good fight for people to see. And then there's really no other fights on that card besides Matt Schnell versus Tyson Nam, number 9 versus 13 for a flyweight bout. That's going to be really good for them to see. I think there'll be a lot of knockouts on that card, and that'll be one that people might regret not seeing.
Hey, you heard it from Chuck here first. Keep those matches. Chuck, anything else that we need to know going forward?
Watch for Khabib coming out of retirement at some point of the year. Yeah, depending on how the fights go with everything. I feel like if Conor wins, you'll see Khabib maybe get ready to start to come out of retirement. They'll put Conor up against maybe another piece of competition to see how he's really holding up. Put him up against like probably a number 2 contender or something. And then if he does good, they'll probably put him up for the belt. Or he might just fight for the belt against whoever gets it in between that place period. And then Khabib will come back and want to fight for that belt and take the belt from him and see how things go. If it all plays out like that.
if it all plays out like that. Well, you heard it here first. That's another first. Chuck's calling it Khabib comeback 2021. We'll have to wait and see on that. But Chuck, man, I appreciate you coming on, talking some UFC. I know when the rest of the group, when we did the end of year podcast, one of the biggest things we want to do in 2021 is definitely have some more UFC talk, which means
definitely I'm down to. There's a lot of good fights probably that are going to happen this year. A lot of different things that are going to be changing around in the UFC. So I'm definitely happy to see what happens this year. UFC is starting to make a bigger name for itself and have a bigger platform. As you can see, they're on ABC now. So they're going to move up a lot into the sport that a lot of people are going to want to see because they're year round. There's no stopping it. And then, as you can see, because COVID, they're still going on perfectly fine and normal. So we'll see how it goes with that and everything. But I think UFC is going to start being able to put out more numbers. And with more numbers, start to look for more money for fighters potentially. And with that happening, you might see a lot more bigger fights and a lot more people starting to like actually want to get on a better way of putting out more fights so they can make more money.
Yeah, agreed. Chuck, any last things?
I want to say thank you for having me, Martin, again. Everybody look out for Matt Brown tomorrow. Tomorrow night. And I just can't wait to be on here more and talk more UFC with you guys.
Hey. And with that being said, thank you everyone for listening to the L7C podcast, UFC edition. Get used to having Mr. Marlowe because he will be back probably after this pay-per-view and then the next one so that he can break down both of them for us in one episode. And with that being said, thank you everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.